I'm not a great chef. I'm good, but I'm not. There are a lot better chefs out there. But what I am good at is coordination. If the President of the United States says I need to feed 400 people in Cherry Point tomorrow morning, and I'm in California, it gets done.
You are about to embark upon the great crusade
to meet this mounting aggression.
And make no mistake about it, good will prevail.
I was born in Manchester, England in 1965, the 24th of September, in a place called Crumpsall. My father was in the Army as a sapper. My brother was in the Army in the Special Air Service. And I joined the Navy as a cook and then went to Special Operations right after that. 15 and a half years old, I was not a good kid at school. So my mother went to work one day, called the house. I answered the phone. It was the demise of Robert Irvine, straight down to the Navy recruitment office. And I was not the smartest kid on the block. Things I did at school was woodwork, home economics, and sports. So you can imagine taking a maths and English test. It wasn't that smart. I got 5.5 being the lowest on each category. But the recruitment guys said, well, congratulations, Mr. Irvine. You now are in the Majesty's Royal Navy and you're going to be a cook.
Were you already interested in cooking at that point?
I love cooking.
Yeah.
I was in a home economics class with 30 girls. So I made my first quiche Lorraine, and the quiche Lorraine was what really set me on the path to loving food and really understanding that the food was hope and could have hard conversations over food or a cup of coffee. And I still use that philosophy today.
What was it about cooking that you loved? You mentioned the social aspect and that sort of thing, but what was it about the actual process that you enjoyed?
I think the fact that you can take raw ingredients and create something that somebody's going to eat and enjoy and nourish, I think that was the biggest thing for me. A quiche Lorraine is not, it's pastry, it's cheese, it's eggs, it's bacon and onions. But mixed together and baked at the right temperature creates a meal that is satisfactory to anybody. And I think that's what struck me the most about the science behind food. And that's what got me involved in it.
So tell me what it was like being a cook in the Navy.
It was interesting because when I was young, obviously 16 years old, I took a train from Salisbury, Wiltshire to Royal Naval Air Station called Rose, got there at midnight, and I ended up in a transit mess with 12 other people that were a lot older than me, being out drinking, and I was literally hiding in my bed under the covers, not knowing these people who were drunk. So that was, eye-opening, I suppose. And from that point forward, the next day, and joining the wardroom galley, the officers' mess, and having two female bosses, which is interesting because, I had a mother, obviously, but I've never worked for two females. It was interesting because Prince Andrew and Prince Charles learned to fly there. So I saw them every day. Just a great experience for me. I wasn't a good cook, I will tell you that. I remember them asking to make me 3,000 boiled eggs for an event, and I said, well, okay, 3,000 times 11 minutes. By the time I come back, there was no eggs left. So it was a hard lesson in the beginning.
And where did you serve around the world? Where did your tours take you?
So I was on board the Royal Yacht Britannia. I was on HMS Apollo. I'd been literally around the world. The Falklands during the war, HMS Apollo, HMS Nelson. I was Flag Officer Plymouth, Flag Officer Portsmouth. I've been everywhere. Minesweepers, fast patrol boats. I'd been around.
Tell me what it was like in the Falklands.
Falklands was unusual because it was just cold. We sailed to Ascension Islands. That was our kind of last relaxation point. You have a U.S. Air Base there, swimming off the ship, and then it became real. When you steam from the Ascension Islands to the Falklands. It was interesting. Never seen the Falklands, never even heard of it. But it was cold, full of seals, and not the seals we think of, big fat seals. And we were ship's biscuits, and it was an incredible experience for me. Not only I went back twice after the war, and retraipsed where we went and traveled. And for a 78-day war, it was a lot of casualties and a lot of death. It was interesting. I was a frigate, so fast movement, like trying to protect the destroyers, basically. We were in St. Carlos water. There's nowhere we didn't go, that's for sure. But obviously, if you think of the war in general, it was really an air war more than it was anything else. French super restaurateurs would come over the mountains, drop their munitions, and run. There was no real fighting except on land between Goose Green and the St. Carlos water, but it was really fast and furious.
When did you move to America?
I moved to America in 1996, end of 1996. Excuse me. 1997, I started working at Trump Taj Mahal. 1997, I was asked by the Navy Food Service to look at their food based on submarines, which was the cook chill facility, and then look at RFPs for replacement of cans, which took me 4 years to do. It went into service this year in the Army, so we're trying to get rid of cans because they're heavy and weight and things. So my whole interaction with the military is a solution providing. There's a problem. How do we give it a solution with people, with feeding, with aircraft carriers, all those kind of things that the general public doesn't think. You know, when you go on an aircraft carrier, it's not a cook that's cooking your food. It's a guy that's pumping gas, opening into planes, opening bags, and putting frozen food in an oven and then onto a line. There's no cooks or very few cooks. And I see the military changing that way to be value added as opposed to cooks cooking food. It's happening now.
How did you get into television?
Television, I wrote a show called Dinner Impossible, which was based on a year of my life. And it was kind of interesting because I'd been to aircraft carriers. I took the first lady on aircraft carriers. I'd been around the world. And Food Network had never had something. It was always a dump and stir network. Literally, you see Julia Child in the kitchen, and they wanted action. And that's what I bought. No food, no equipment, and a timeline to get food done. Whether it be 6,000 people in 8 hours, find the food, figure it out. And I thrive at that. I love that. You drop me into Afghanistan, feed 30,000 people, I've got it. I can cook for the President of the United States, which I do a lot, on a state dinner, and no worries. It doesn't matter to me. So food to me is just an object to get to a point. I'm not a great chef. I'm good, but I'm not. There are a lot better chefs out there. But what I am good at is coordination. If the President of the United States says I need to feed 400 people in Cherry Point tomorrow morning, and I'm in California, it gets done.
So I think a lot of our listeners and viewers are familiar with Restaurant Impossible. How much of that is how it really works in terms of the intensity and the rebuking, and how much of that is entertainment value?
No entertainment value. That's 100% real.
Wow.
And the reason that's real is I know nothing about the restaurant when I walk into it. I know nothing about the people. And nor do I want to, because I don't want to prejudge. You tell me the story, you tell me your vision, I ask you why your vision didn't work, and it's 5 questions in rapid succession. It's an old interrogation technique we use in the military. By the time I ask you the 5th question, you've already trying to answer the first one. You're never going to lie to me, right? So it's confusion. It's interesting because most people, the biggest failing restaurant in the world is Italian, because the mom said, oh, you make great meatballs, great sauce, gravy, whatever you want to call it. They take their credit cards, they max the credit cards out, they invite all their friends for the first 3 months, then 3 months later they realize they're $350,000 in debt. That's when I come in. There's no procedures, there's no leadership, and there's four courses of leadership. Empathetic leadership, which means know your people, know that what makes them tick. Johnny's son has autism. He can't come in today, he calls out. The next thing is egos, yours and theirs, right? There's always egos. Number 3 is trust, and number 4 is authenticity. And if you run all four of those and you have the basic standard operating procedures, you'll be successful in any business. Whether you're American Airlines, whether you're Walmart, whether you're Robert Irvine Inc., it doesn't matter. They're the four pillars of success. And I always find the biggest failure there is leadership. The vision, having a vision to be able to tell somebody to do something and then hold them accountable to do it. Because it never happens. We all get carried away. We're on television, let's just waste time, right? And that's what they do. And if you look through COVID, we lost 54% of our restaurants. And the only TV show on the road was mine, Restaurant Impossible. 4 buses, 2 trucks, 66 episodes of TV during COVID, saving restaurants.
As you look back now, do most of the people you help learn their lessons and continue running them well, or is it a mixed bag?
It's interesting. Since COVID, I can't give you a real number simply because we lost so many. I can tell you since the beginning of COVID that we went on the road, we had 96% successful in the restaurants that I touched in those 3 years. And it still continues. We're on hiatus right now, ready to come back with a lot of other shows, by the way. But I think small business is what built America. And the more we focus on small business, mom and pop, the better America will be. More taxes will be paid instead of big conglomerates that keep taking over places and pushing small business out.
How did you get so involved in helping American veterans and active duty military?
1997, as I said, the White House came to me to figure a problem out. I figured the problem out but proved it wouldn't work to them. I decided to go to the White House every week, 2 days a week, work with a guy named Tony Powell, who was the Master Chief of the White House Mess. I ended up started going on trips with the president, and the rest is kind of history. I've never left. I'm kind of the structure. The Pentagon came along. I had an RFP. I got the RFP. I've been in the Pentagon 7 years and literally been traveling with the military since 1997 when Admiral Bianchi, who used to run Navy Exchange, who still does now as a civilian, asked me to go and do some pep rallies for his staff around the world, Italy and Gitmo, and I did. I went and did meals, did rah-rah speeches, and here we are. I'm still doing it at 57 years old.
Tell me about the Robert Irvine Foundation. How did it get started and what do you do?
The foundation was really interesting because for years, 15 years, I'd worked with Gary Sinise. Literally, he texted me or tweeted me. He was on his way to Alaska. I was on my way to Honduras to a Special Forces base, Sotacana Air Base. He said, "Is this the real Robert Irvine?" And I went, "Duh, I've got a blue check mark. Is this the real Gary Sinise?" Because he didn't have a check mark. And he said, "I've got an idea." And I said, "Well, I'm in." We created the Invincible Spirit Festivals where I would feed 8,000 to 10,000 folks. He would play a concert. And we're still doing that. We just finished, actually, 2 days ago, our 21st Invincible Spirits Festival at all the Naval Medical Hospitals. And we're still doing it. But 8 years into that, I decided I wanted to do more mental and physical health. And we started our own foundation, Robert Irvine Foundation, which has done exactly that. Dogs, iBot, wheelchairs, programs, reuniting the brave, feeding our heroes. We feed our heroes in bases around the world every week, somewhere, somehow. As I said, we just did 8 bases in Poland, which was amazing. We'll be in Scotland next week, then Gitmo, then Germany feeding 4,000, then Jordan right after that. So we never stop.
Fantastic. What's it like to be born somewhere else and come here and experience all of this?
I think it's really important because for me, England was great and I served a great nation, but they don't take care of the soldiers, sailors, airmen. There's no transition. As you've served your service, thank you very much, you're out. And I think that's a big mistake, and hopefully this year we're going to address that. If you think of England now, most of our RAF bases are U.S. Air Force bases. We don't have any of our own anymore. They're run by the U.S. Up until 9/11, we were a great nation that supported our military. 9/11 happened. The country came together. It was amazing. I was here. Then all of a sudden, we have lost national pride. I feel that the American people have, not all, but a lot of lost national pride and forgotten what our military does. Never forget sitting in Afghanistan with Robert Abrams, 2-star, Abe Abrams, who then went on to become 4-star like his brother and dad. But he said to me, don't ever forget and let the American people forget what our men and women that wear the cloth of a nation do. And I took that to the heart, and I live, eat, and breathe that every day of my life, because I want the American people to know what they do, what our veterans have done, what they continue to do. Just because we retire from our military, our veterans are upstanding members of our community. They go into companies and they make them companies better. And I think that's my job. My job on this planet is to make sure that we help those less fortunate. We get the people that need the help, post-traumatic stress, and injuries, limbs, wheelchairs, dogs, whatever it is, where the government has failed in certain areas with money. Other, the USOs, the Robert Irvine Foundations, the Garrison East Foundations, the TAPS, and all those folks are stepping in to help and fix those problems and getting them done. And I think that's what we're supposed to do, is to remind the American public that, yes, we may not be in Afghanistan and Iraq, although we still are, and they don't know it, but we are around the world. We are keeping them safe, and they can come out at night and go to restaurants and eat because of that 1% of the United States men and women that wear the cloth of a nation.